It's time to move the flag from the Capitol grounds.
It belongs in a museum.
And I think they should put it in the museum.
And if I was president, and this was federal grounds, would I ask for its removal? The answer is yes.
It was used as a flag of terrorism.
I am not offended at all by our flag or the Confederate flag, for that matter.
Politicizing this and putting it in the context of a presidential campaign, I think cheapens it.
Well, cheapens it or not, it's happening right now, debating the Confederate flag. We continue to do so here on Newsmax Now. A great place to start our roundtable this hour. Please welcome in political columnist Liz Peek, also rejoining us is investigative reporter for the Washington Examiner, Sarah Westwood. A pleasure to speak with both of you. We first started talking about this last week. Liz, let me ask you a question. Based on what we've seen so far, we've seen a lot of Republican candidates, including the governor of South Carolina, who's not running for office, but probably has a political future, coming out very strongly against the Confederate flag on the grounds of the South Carolina State House. Are you surprised at this point?
No, because I think politically this is where the wave is going, and I think Republicans especially are very eager to lift the tent flaps and include more people in the Republican Party. Let me just say, though, I would like to see this much energy expended on something that really might move the needle for the Black community in America, which would be improving public education. This is tokenism, and I understand it's a very important token to many people of racial hatred, and so let's get rid of it. But honestly, there's really more profound and more important work to be done here.
All right, so you would like to hear one of these candidates make the turn and say, yes, we will do this because it's an important symbol and we want to remove that symbol, but there's a way we could really help the Black community, and that is by, say, school choice.
Yes, and by the way, it's a message that resonates extremely well with the Black community and with Hispanics. So rather than just falling in line with something that seems honestly superficial, I understand again that this is a very important thing to some people, and I respect that, but this is not going to change someone's life. Better public schools could change lives, and that's where we should be focused.
All right, well, Sarah, we look at Bobby Jindal entering the race today. He's one of the candidates who has talked a lot about the issue of school choice. Will his entry into the race magnify the conversation on that particular topic at all?
You know, every time a candidate enters the race, they bring something new to the overall discussion. School choice is something Bobby Jindal will certainly bring to the table. It's very popular, like Liz said, among a number of voter groups, and it's something that needs to be addressed. The education system does have a lot of flaws, and Bobby Jindal is a great person to bring that to the table rather than a candidate who hasn't really dealt with it in the past, but is just sort of bringing it up to score points. Bobby Jindal has a record of sort of dealing with this in Louisiana. It's something he can bring to the national debate stage.
All right, well, let's take a look at some of the candidates and what they are saying about the Confederate flag.
This is part of who we are. The flag represents to some people a civil war.
In Florida, it's not up in art. It was moved to a museum.
I don't personally display it anywhere, so it's not an issue for me.
Confederate flag causes a lot of people angst, and they're not able to see beyond that.
That's a decision for the people of South Carolina.
We'll let the states decide that.
My opinion is that we should let the people of South Carolina go through the process of making this decision.
You look at these guys, and, you know, there is a particular kind of kid glove, you know, thing going on here with the way that some of the candidates are trying to handle the issue. You know, there's been also discussion about the politicizing this issue, but I mean, based on what's happened, Liz, it's hard not to.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, it's really pretty remarkable that after this terrible, terrible murder, the next thing we're all consumed with is the discussion about a flag. I mean, I understand how the dots connected, but it doesn't seem particularly germane, really, to the tragedy that happened in South Carolina. Look, it is a state's issue, but I think what we're going to see is more and more states deciding they don't want to be offensive to people, and in particular the states that have large populations of African Americans. So I think you're going to see, you know, as in so many other things, that that politicians are going to go where the sentiment is. I think it'll be honestly too bad if we have an overreaction here. They're talking about getting rid of Jefferson Davis's statue and so forth and so on. We cannot deny our history. And obliterating our history is what ISIS does, right? That's not the United States. We have people who are very proud of their Confederate heritage, of their, you know, legacy in their states and so forth. So I think you have to be a little bit careful not to just wantonly destroy our history, because actually we can learn from history. That's the important message here. It is not that the Confederate flag is simply a rallying point for people who hate blacks, or whites who hate blacks, or blacks who hate whites. It should be as considered a symbol of an offensive part of our history, which we have done away with, which in fact, took our biggest war in America's history. More lives were lost getting rid of slavery. That's the proud part of this legacy. And
there's an aspect of that, Liz, but I think also, the fact that this flag was trumpeted and celebrated by the suspect in this case shows that we have a long way to go as well. But we have more to go in this conversation. We've got to take a short commercial break. We'll be back with Liz Peek and Sarah Westwood in a few seconds. And we welcome you back into the roundtable. With us again, political columnist Liz Peek and investigative reporter for the Washington Examiner, Sarah Westwood. Sarah, I'll give you a chance to wrap up here on this issue. One of the things that I was most surprised about, you expected to hear the 2016 GOP candidates weigh in on this issue. You know that the press corps is going to challenge them out there, but I was a little surprised to hear Mitch McConnell weigh in the way that he did. What was your take on that?
This is one of those rare flashpoint issues that united Republicans and Democrats pretty swiftly. I mean, you saw a remarkably powerful change in the way the nation regards a symbol that has had cultural significance for decades. And quite frankly, it's a great step in the right direction, because that does hold such a racially charged meaning to so many people. And it's honestly not worth defending. And you saw people you might not expect, like Mitch McConnell, step in and weigh in on this flag issue. You saw it become sort of a benchmark issue for all of the presidential candidates, Hillary Clinton included. And so, it's sort of an interesting case study in an issue like this to see what has happened with the Confederate flag just in the span of a week.
Yeah, obviously these 9 murders obviously set off this debate anew, but it's not new. The debate happened a long time ago in the late 1990s in South Carolina about moving it from the dome. Also in my home state of Georgia, too, about taking the battle flag off of that state flag. But a very divisive issue then and now, and I'm sure the conversation will continue. We do want to turn our attention, though, to 2016 and Donald Trump. He's never had really a problem with being clear out there on the campaign trail or elsewhere, and that may be a contributing factor to his surge in the polls. Maybe America wants a plain-spoken candidate out there. A Suffolk University poll has Trump coming in second place in New Hampshire with Republican voters with 11%. He's only 3 percentage points behind Jeb Bush here. Liz, should we take Donald Trump seriously as a candidate?
I think we should take his popularity seriously, by which I mean I don't think he's going to be the presidential candidate no matter how he does in New Hampshire. And let's not lose track of the fact that one of the things he brings to this party is enormous name recognition, and that's very powerful, particularly in the early stages here. But in terms of his message, here's what I take seriously. People are tired of the idea that America is always on the losing end of confrontations with China, with Russia, with Iran, etc. And I think the President Obama, has exacerbated Americans' feelings of frustration that we are constantly, as I say, on the losing end of whether it's trade negotiations or cyber intrusions or whatever. And particularly in the last year, when we have been basically under attack in the Middle East, when Iran seems to be doing a dance around us in hopes of getting the sanctions lifted and hundreds of billions of dollars floating in that can further aggrandize them in the Middle East, when Putin is making a mockery of all kinds of treaties we have with Russia. I have to say, I sort of am glad to have Donald Trump or whoever saying it's time to put an end to this. It's time to stand up to bullies, and the United States needs to do that now. And he has been very vocal on that topic.
All right, well, a lot of folks were criticizing him for not filing his paperwork. That happened yesterday. The Daily Beast, they're also writing, Donald Trump isn't really running for president. He's running to make more money and enhance a brand that's bigger than his real estate holdings and golf courses. Now, do you think, though, if that is the case, which not necessarily sure if that is the case or not, but do you think other candidates might co-opt his message, as Liz said, because it does kind of inspire the fact that America can be what it once was, perhaps, or still is?
Well, sort of that strong Americanism, that's something that all the candidates bring to the table. But because Donald Trump is Donald Trump, he can say things in a way that other candidates can't. And that's probably the best aspect of his candidacy that, you know, a Donald Trump presidential campaign brings. He's very bombastic, and he's not shackled by the fact that he currently holds elected office or might want to run again, because Donald Trump has his own, you know, media and real estate empire. He's not a career politician like some of the other candidates in the race. And so he can sort of say things in an unbridled fashion that other candidates just can't say.
Well, since he's an announced candidate now, and of course none of us here are predicting that he's going to be the nominee, do you predict that, Liz, that he'll be out on the stump for any of the other candidates?
I think that's a really good question. I would hope so, because I think he does attract a crowd. He does get people fired up. I'm not sure how many candidates would want him. I think that's going to really be kind of an interesting thing to watch, because he is a loose cannon, to be sure, and I think it's totally true. You can't really ever predict what he's going to say. So, you know, look, I think he can be a force for good. Whether other people will want to identify him with him, good question. I'm not sure.
Yeah, last word to you, Sarah, about 30 seconds left to go. Do you think you will see Donald Trump out there on the stump for anybody else?
It's a possibility, you know, because someone, you see a figure like Sarah Palin out on the stump, who's also considered in the GOP circles a little bit of a loose cannon. But people who get crowds fired up are increasingly rare, because people watch what they say so carefully.
Yeah.
That's not a characteristic anyone would ascribe to Donald Trump. So hopefully for the Republicans, they will see him out there on the trail for the eventual nominee.
I believe the correct terminology, though, is going rogue, not a loose cannon for Sarah Palin, going rogue. Liz Peek, thanks so much for being with us. Also, Sarah Westwood from the Washington Examiner. Good to have you both back with us.
Thanks for having me.
All right, coming up, rising star C.J. Pearson joins us right after this.